Hey everyone, Pastor Shannon here. I am excited to have another interview today. Today I have with me Dr. Walter Fluker. Will you say hi to everyone and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Hello, everybody. I'm Walter O. Fluker. I was born in Mississippi. I was raised in Chicago, Illinois. I now live in Atlanta. I'm Professor Emeritus of Ethical Leadership at Boston University, where I first met Shannon as a student in the Doctorate of Ministry program. I also am the Dean's Professor of Spirituality, Ethics, and Leadership at Emory University, Candler School of Theology. And I'm here today to engage in some holy mischief.
I am super excited about that. Dr. Fluker is a fan of Holy Mischief, and he sent me a Facebook message a few weeks ago and said, I'm a fan. And I said, great, I would love to have some hard conversations because I need to be challenged myself. I will say this, you probably don't know this, but the first day of my doctorate program was with Dr. Fluker. We're sitting in a room, and I don't remember what was said. I just remember I felt like I was breathing again. I love to learn, and I was with people that were there to challenge me and to help me grow, and it was wonderful. And so I think about those times fondly, and I think about also this book, The Power of Noticing by Max Bazerman. This was one of the books that Dr. Fluker had us read. And my mind was blown reading this because I thought, wow, there are some questions that if we ask those of ourselves and of our world, would transform us in any situation. So anytime I'm doing something, I try to think through what am I not asking? What is it that no one else is asking that we need to know? And so that's my question for you, Dr. Fluker, today. With everything that's been going on over the past week since the murder of George Floyd, what is it that we are not asking ourselves in our world right now?
That's a good question. And I'd like to backdrop Holy Mischief because I love it so much. I shared with you earlier that I think Holy Mischief has more to do with a childlike curiosity. Holy Mischief enters the world and it asks these questions of wonder and of curiosity because it wants to know what's going on. And so if you've ever had a child or a grandchild who is about 2 or 3 years old and they start asking why, you have an idea of what I mean. Part of the work, I think, of the church, and in fact, any individual or group that is concerned about justice has to bring to the occasion, to the context, this idea of holy mischief, which asks the question of curiosity and wonder. So I always say to students, you might remember in an introduction to ethical leadership, I said a primary ethical question is not the question of what is right or wrong or good or bad. It's what's going on.
Yes, I remember that song came on the other day, and I was like, that's our song.
What's going on? And by the way, Marvin Gaye is not the first person to ask that question. It's really a primary ethical question. H. Richard Niebuhr, the Christian ethicist, whose brother was Reinhold Niebuhr, asked the question. He said, "But ethics begins with the question, what's going on?" So I think holy mischief is about what's going on and why should I be interested? And if I am interested, then what shall I commit myself to? Let's take the current context. What's going on? And what has been going on? Not just in our cities or even in our rural communities and not just in America, as the protests around the world attest to, in London, in Australia, in Greece, in Paris. What's going on? Is there a worldwide eruption, as Martin Luther King Jr. used to speak about, that there's something shaking our world? And for those of us who are faithful to our commitments to love and to justice and to transformation, we must ask that primary question. One of the ways we seek answers to the question is not to begin with the answer. Most Christian churches are quick to give you the answer. Jesus is the answer, but that's not the question. The question is, what's going on? And for, in this country, we always say for 400 years.
Right.
But if you think about it, around the 14th, 15th century, Europe began to expand globally. It colonized nations all around the world, extracted minerals and natural resources and produced them, and often sold the products of the people who labored, the very products, the sugar, the tea, the cotton. They sold it even back to the people who produced it. And that was the beginning of what we call modern day capitalism. That's a scary word still in America, throughout the world, because now we have the licentious spread of global capital that has gone around the world. But what it does in its, not just its aftermath, but in its confrontation with people around the world, it alienates them not just from their labor, nor from the product of their labor. It alienates them from themselves. So what's going on for me, sorry for that long meandering conversation, but
Okay.
I do this for a living. What's going on for me is the eruption of a new generation of people who are beginning to see some answers to these questions. That it's not an accident that they're unemployed. It's not an accident that so many of these people don't receive the kind of education and certainly are not protected by the state of which they are part. So many have discovered that they never really were citizens, in fact. And this is shocking when the answers come. They're very painful. And as I warned you earlier, Holy Mischief has a way of pulling you in. And once you ask the question and you say, boy, why do I feel alienated and so troubled within? And why isn't the church giving me what I need? When
well,
I ask
that's a great question right there. We could spend hours on that one. So, I've got your book here too. Ethical Leadership.
When I was younger, that's much better.
Yeah. So the subtitle is The Quest for Character, Civility, and Community. When we're watching protests that turn into riots, how is this a quest for civility? I think that's kind of the discord a lot of people are watching and seeing, that this doesn't seem civil. But in a true sense, it's a quest for civility. So how do you try, is it any way helpful to try to reconcile that? Or is there a different way to look at it?
Yeah. Civility normally conjures up the idea of etiquette. I know where to place my napkin, my fork, and how to behave in public. And so it has an idea of etiquette behind it, manners, good manners. I love to think of civility first as the etiquette of democracy. Democracy has a certain etiquette, and it's not necessarily passive. When democracy or democratic space is no longer available for people or for groups, then they must raise questions in Holy Mischief about why this is so, right? And so they engage in civil disobedience. And civility comes from civitas, which is the idea of citizenship, having a place of worth and dignity within a polis or a society. So when I am alienated from the very society of which I claim to be a part, and I am not granted the rights and the prerogatives of the culture of which I'm a part, then I engage in disruptive behavior, sometimes subversive civility, in order to create the space for dialogue and for action. So what you see with many of the young people who are out in the streets, and a few of us older ones, who are asking these questions, they're engaged in the quest for civility. But on the way, when systems have become recalcitrant, hardened, uh, unresponsive, as we see in our present state of things and our leadership, then it's necessary, as Martin Luther King Jr. often said, to become engaged in transformative actions that bring us closer to civility. And in order to do that, one must shock the system. So civil disobedience is a way of getting the attention of those who are in power in society, and especially political and economic leaders.
So that sounds like Holy Mischief.
That is mischief. That's the question that drags you over the line.
Yeah. So you're disrupting something. You're getting attention in order to create a transformative change, whether that's in a system or with a group of people.
And it's not a conversation per se. It's a bodily conversation at best, but it's really about action. I cannot swim, Shannon, until I get in the water. And one of the things we do in
that's deep. Can I just process that for about just a hot minute? I can't swim until I get in the water. Okay. So there are a lot of my colleagues, my Black colleagues, who are saying, you gotta say something now. Now is the time. Basically, they're saying you got to get in the water. You just can't stand on the edge. And I think I have a lot. No, I don't want to speak for a group of people that I think that we have a lot of people that do want to do something, but they're not exactly sure what they should do. What would be your suggestion about how they discern that for themselves?
I use I guess it's a metaphor, it might be an analogy, but the old enslaved Africans had a song, and you probably heard it before. It would say, wade in the water, wade in the water, and it goes on. And then they say, God's gonna trouble the water. This is the wisdom of my ancestors. They knew that you could not wait to have absolute answers. The answers come with engaging the question. And engaging the question, I told you, pulls you over the line. In this case, into the water. And you got to trust the movement of the waters. And so for churches who are having conversations, I'm encouraging them, don't always worry so much about when and where you enter, but be willing to move. Because if we take faith seriously, just as there's holy mischief, there are also holy nudges. There are moments, sometimes of which you are not even aware, where you're being pushed into the water. Martin Luther King Jr. did not ever expect to go to Montgomery to lead the modern civil rights movement. Mahatma Gandhi had no idea when he was growing up in India, later in South Africa, that he would be the one to challenge the might of the mighty British Empire. Fannie Lou Hamer, picking cotton 16 hours a day in Indianola, Mississippi, had no idea that one day she'd move from picking cotton to picking presidents. You don't get it until you get into the water. And that's the biggest challenge for most of our churches. We love to sit on the sidelines and preach about this and talk about this and feel it. We like feeling and saying we have empathy, but you can't get it until you get in the water.
You got to get in the water.
I think that's enough of that. But God troubles the waters. God is in the waters.
Well, I'm going to let that be kind of our closing thought, because through the sheltering in place, God has been drawing me to places of living water. And I've learned that living water is a symbol for God's grace. And if there wasn't a place to worship, people would go to the water. But God also wants us to get in, and it's not always going to be still and calm, but it's still going to be filled with grace.
Wow.
Look at God right there. That was good stuff.
Yeah, that was heavy. I thought about, and we can close Acts. I think it's the 8th chapter. Philip is evangelizing, and he sees this Ethiopian. And the Ethiopian, of course, is a person of great standing. He's the Queen's valet or whatever. And Philip says, "You need to be baptized." And the guy said, well, show me the water. Show me how to do it. And the church needs to do this. We need to model, not so much Philip, who is evangelizing. We need to model the Ethiopian who says, show me where the water is. Show me how to do this. And I think God meets us at the point of our commitment. Absolutely.
Well, that is beautiful. So I'm going to say that the Holy Mischief challenge you are issuing to people is show me the water.
Yeah, get in the water.
And get in it. Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much. It was great to have you today, and I hope to see you in person soon. I like to just get onto Candler's campus, and so maybe I'll just pop in a class one day.
And of course, I think on African American ethical leadership and African American moral traditions in the fall, and a seminar on Howard Thurman in the spring.
Oh, that's the one I want to get in.
Come on.
Oh, love it. All right. Thank you so much.
All righty. Bye-bye. And